Okay. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Gamestate Episode 8. It is Monday, September the 10th. And this week we have not too much to talk about, but a little bit of stuff. It's going to be a bit of a lighter show. We have a Star City, both Standard and Legacy, that occurred in Portland. And we also have some Return to Ravnica spoilers. So that's what we're going to be giving you today. Hopefully you will enjoy it. I am your host, Adam, a winner is you, Ragsdale. And with me are the lovely and attractive Glenn Jones, event coverage manager for StarCityGames.com.
Hello, everyone.
Stephen Flavel, poker pro and magic aficionado.
Yeah.
And Cedric Phillips, professional wizard.
Good afternoon.
So let us fire right away, I guess, into the standard open from Portland. We had a top 8 which was 3 Infect decks, 3 Zombours decks, 1 Neopod, and 1 Elves accelerating Primeval Titan thing. Green
Sure.
Summer, is that what it was called?
Yeah.
The Travis Wu Brew, by those in the know. So that was what we had. It was won by Black Red Zombies, I believe. And I'm just gonna pass it off. Let's go to Cedric first. Cedric, you get to go first on Portland.
Portland, where I was doing commentary for the weekend. The most notable thing to me for this particular tournament, outside of the lack of there being any Delver decks in the top 16, 3 mono green Infect decks in the top 8. A deck that doesn't see a ton of play. 4 mono, and there's actually a 4th one in 14th place, so 4 throughout the top 16. It's a deck that doesn't see a ton of play. It's a deck that a lot of people don't believe is really that good, or kind of like a niche deck, or kind of like a fluke that Nick Marriott got second place with it in an open. But I think this tournament does a nice job of proving otherwise. Even though it didn't win the tournament, having 3 copies of the deck in the top 8 is relatively significant, especially for a deck that people consider to be pretty flimsy, pretty poor, not one of the tier 1 decks of the format. So I think that this is definitely something to take note of. I wouldn't be surprised to see it pick up a little bit next weekend in Los Angeles, and potentially at the Invitational in Atlanta. Other than that, I was a little bit surprised to see Black Blue Zombies make the top 8 instead of just our normal Black Red. And I guess suck it, Steven, because there's no Delver decks in top 16. So there you go. That's about it.
All right, seems fair. Glenn, do you have anything to add before we get to Steven's rejoinder?
Not especially. I considered Mono Green Infect like a very playable deck in the format for a while. Once I started like actually playing against it, which I think a lot of its detractors don't do. You have to respect that its matchups are really strong outside of Delver and Zombies. Like so many decks in the format not only are like soft to it, but actually just lack the ways to interact with it. It's not like you're in a 40-60 or something. It's like you're just getting crushed. So it's definitely a real deck, and a lot of Primeval Titans got destroyed by it in this tournament. A lot of Neopod players, a lot of random other decks like that, the slower green decks that just couldn't actually kill a guy when they really needed to kill a guy. And I think that's basically why the deck performed so well.
Alrighty. Steven, you're up.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be 4 Delver decks next week. Like, don't even care. Don't even, like, do not even care a little bit. Like, in our little prompter for this week, we get a little prompter from Adam, like, which topics are we going to discuss? And Adam writes, like, what's the reason that Delver is starting to fall off in this format or something like that? And I'm just like, 4 copies next week, top 8.
It's just not going
I
to
have
happen.
to say,
I'll take the under on 4. I'll take the under on 4.
Yeah. I mean,
you want
I
some?
set the line at 2.5 probably, realistically, but we're gonna hit 4 anyway.
Wow, you won't even set it at 3.5? All right.
I
would take the under on 3.5.
I'm a little bit honestly disappointed you portrayed me as seriously asking that question, and you didn't slip in my Delver's bad matchup as Portland joke. But I mean, I'll take what I can get, I suppose.
I mean, I brought it up a little bit when I was doing the commentary, but like the Pacific Northwest isn't really known for like people playing Delver, especially the best people in the area, or like the the grinders or whatever, like they're not the ones that play that deck. Like Travis Wu's playing Green Summer, and like I just refuse to play Delver, and like Corbett Gray and like the guys from Vancouver don't play Delver. So like going into the tournament, like I just knew that there wasn't going to be a lot of Delver players. And even some of the people who decide to like travel up, like Michael Hetrick doesn't play Delver, Joe Lissette doesn't play Delver. It's just not an area of the world that plays Delver, which like I don't know if that's like a good or a bad thing. Like maybe the people are just like dumb for not playing it, but I like knew going to the tournament that we weren't going to be featuring a lot of Delver, and I wasn't surprised when like it did make the top 6. Like we didn't see any in the top 16, even though there was a guy who like lost to Zombies playing for top 8 and then ended up finishing outside of the top 16. So it was there, but it's not horribly represented up here.
Do you guys wanna touch on the Green Summer real quick? I think it's like a somewhat interesting deck.
Yeah.
All right.
Like to.
Okay. Do you want to go first, Steven? You want to
Sure.
roll with it?
So the deck is like green-white elves. It has a gazillion 1-drops. It has Elvis Arch Druids, and then it casts giant things: Titans, Green Sun Zeniths, Thrag Tusk, Wolfer, Silver Heart. I guess it has Palladium there too, so it has like 8 3s. So it's basically a ramp deck, and I think it's cool to compare it to Wolf Run Ramp because it is not so different. And I think they're like sort of doing similar things. There's one huge weakness that this deck has and one huge strength that it has over Wolf Run Ramp. The huge weakness is obviously any sort of board clearing spell kills all of your mana, which is not good. But nobody's playing the board clearing stuff right now, so it makes it a pretty sweet choice. And the strength is that this mana clearing stuff. Oh, I didn't turn off Roomba.
Yes.
I'm fairly glad that happened.
Yeah, me too.
He can't control it. He can't find it.
Your mana elves can actually kill people because of Gavany Township.
Nice save. Good work.
Eloquent.
That's like sort of like when my cat jumps into the video, except not quite as cute.
Very nice Roomba.
Alright, do either of the people who witnessed its majesty in person wish to comment on the Green Summer, a deck which is so hot that it requires its pilot to wear a toque or whatever, like the ear flap hat?
Eskimo hat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know what it's called.
The deck, it seems like to me that because there's not that much Delver, that means like a diminished Gutshot presence, and also the fact that they decided to go with 3 main decks, sort of Feast and Famines. Like the only decks that aren't Delver are basically Zombies and Green decks, and unsurprisingly, sort of Feast and Famine is pretty good against those 2 different kinds of decks. So I think that basically their deck construction paid off, and one of the matchups that can be tricky just didn't exist.
That's totally fair. Said, anything to add?
Yeah, I think the deck's terrible.
And
like
with,
Travis is like one of my like relatively good friends. I think like if you know Travis at all, like he like Woo Brew isn't just like a joke. Like he's never gonna play like Delver or like one of the top decks. He just loves to brew and he likes winning on his own terms, which is fine. And like the decks he builds are fine, and like this deck is fine. But like I would never play it. It's just like very fragile. Like there was like this like Zombies is like a pretty big deck now, and even though like the deck, like the way the deck is built, it like varies a lot. Like what Zombies is trying to do is just like very good at beating what he's trying to do, because he's trying to ramp via creatures instead of ramp via ramp spells. So they have like all these ways to just be like, yep, like play a 2-power 1-drop. Like Travis plays a ramp guy, kill it, play another guy. Like plays this next one, kill it, and then like play another guy. And it's like, and you're dead. Like it's just you can't win now. And like God forbid, like the guy who won the tournament didn't have Flames of the Firebrand or like Arc Trail in his deck, but like the guy who won the previous week in Minneapolis did. So like if people are copying that list, it's like pew 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 pew, like kill your elves, like your deck's embarrassing now. Like what are you doing? So yeah, I don't like the deck at all. But like in this particular tournament where like there was no Delver and therefore like no gut shots and like therefore no Snapcasters on gut shots, like it's fine. And like zombie decks not playing Arc Trail or Flames of the Firebrand, and like no whip flares or slag storms or like bonfires in the tournament. So like perfect set of circumstances for the deck to be good. Then
Right, yeah.
Yeah, we
So there are a lot of cards this deck loses to, and most of them are played in the main decks of the format,
yeah,
unfortunately.
I think it might be fair to say that we dodged some things. I just thought it was funny that his response to like gutshot your guy on turn 1 was, "Well, I'm coming back with 2 more on turn 2, so taste it."
yeah,
Like,
can't stop, won't stop.
yeah. Got any more? Cause
Yeah.
I do. Like.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely true.
All right, so that I think that wraps it up. I don't think too much exciting happened there. Moving along to the legacy, we had was it 8 full archetypes in the top 8? It was something like that. I know it was 13 in the top 16.
8 different ones in the top 8.
So
Definitely.
yeah, we had 8 archetypes in the top 8 of the legacy event. The event was won by White Weenie or Death and Taxes, depending on what you want to call it. Some tiny white monsters with various different sticks. We started over there. Let's start with Glenn, I guess.
Sure. I was a little surprised to see Death and Taxes perform so well. It looked like it. I think it looked a little better than it was, if that makes sense. Like just in the games, like I mean, he mulliganed a fair bit, but like even in his mulligans, ran pretty well. The opponents didn't seem hyper aware of a lot of the interactions that could go on and couldn't set up sequences. So like there are games where it looks like the opponent's like struggling, but in reality they're just kind of being impatient and not aware of exactly the steps needed to not die to a 2-power creature. Because that's like kind of what happened in some of the games. You know, you have to respect that it'll take you a little time. You have to take like 8 damage or something, and then start chaining together plays that are actually going to disrupt the board position your opponent's establishing. And at the end of the day, you know, it's a deck without brainstorms. It's casting like 3-mana 1/1s and like kind of vulnerable to wasteland in some ways. It's got a fair bit of mana disruption on its own, so like you can't keep landlight hands, but people in Legacy are like notoriously greedy, so I'm sure that he got plenty of wins off of that. I mean, the guy didn't lose a match in the tournament, so you know, kudos to him. He played pretty well from what I saw, and that's all I can really say about Death and Taxes.
It was
Overwhelmingly.
it was a
positive.
noble effort. My hat is
Yeah,
off to you,
I mean-
Glenn.
Huh?
Sorry, I said my hat was off to you. Let's go to Steven next. Steven, do you have any thoughts about Legacy in general or Death and Taxes in specific?
Like, my horses in Legacy right now are very much blue-white control for like good deck and Omnitel for awesome deck, and they're both in the top 8, so I'm pretty happy with this one. I can get a little bit excited about Death and Taxes too. It's a fun little deck. I think it's not a good deck, and if you somehow don't lose matches with it, it's pretty clear that you're running extremely hot. But, you know, Aethersworn Canonist may be my favorite card, so I would have even like been moving at main deck, and I like really hope that at some point in his life he casts Aethersworn Canonist against Omnipotence, and the guy just like casts 1 cantrip per turn for the rest of the game until he finally finds the threat that kills you. Petals of Insight.
Choose wisely,
Yeah.
friend.
Yeah, I don't know. Legacy is a fun format. It's also a very difficult format to say like anything constructive about, because this is just like, what?
Oh, you didn't think this could happen? Our anecdote of people going into their attic to get a deck, I think this sums it up pretty well with the old Death and Taxes deck. You just blow the dust off this bad boy. The one thing that kind of surprised me in this top 8 is like looking at the top 8. I think that Matt Juszak, who made top 8 both days, he made top 8 day 1 with Mono Green Infect, and then made top 8 with Storm. Is I think like Storm was like really well positioned for this top 8, and what ended up happening when we were doing coverage is so good. What ended up happening is like we finished our first match, and then they were like, yeah, we're going to cut to another match. We're going to cut to Matt Juszak playing Storm against Rug Delver. And we cut in, and the Rug Delver player has like a Tarmogoyf, a Flip Delver, and like 4 lands and like 7 cards in his hand, and Juszak has no lands in play. And I'm just like, what, we cut to this? Are you serious? We cut to this? And then 5 seconds later, Juice Jack's like, "Yep, you win," and it shakes the guy's hand. It's like, and Rug Delver looks as though it took down the Storm player. But realistically, like, obviously, like, Rug Delver is a difficult matchup for Storm. But if you guys have not had the opportunity to look at the Rug Delver list that was in the top 8, like, this guy, like, Steven, like, came to the tournament, like, specifically not to lose the Storm, because he has 4 main deck Stifles and 2 main deck Flusterstorms. So he's literally just like, yeah, Storm, I hope I get paired against you. And, like, I thought that Storm was a pretty good, choice for, like, the tournament and, like, looking at the top 8 in general. And then, like, he just gets paired against the actual Nightmare in the top 8. So, basically, you know, Legacy is Legacy. As Steven said, you're going to see a bunch of different decks. Like, you see Team Italia here, which is a deck, like, we don't see a ton of. Death and Taxes, obviously, is a deck that we don't see a ton of. And we don't see, like, a lot of Storm, but, like, I thought that this would be a pretty good weekend for Storm. And, I mean, just bad matchup in the top 8, but I know that he, like, kind of slashed his way through the Swiss. So that's pretty much about it.
All right. I don't wanna put you guys on the spot too much, but I have some sort of sick fascination with this Stoneblade deck that has Grim Lavamancer instead of all the blue cards. Can you gentlemen shed some insight into what was going on
I
there?
have no insight to shed, but I just have to point out that Grim Lavamancer plus cantrips is like the extremely obvious, like, this is what you do with Grim Lavamancer. You put cantrips in your yard and shoot things. But I guess there just wasn't room for blue anymore. Lavamancer. Sorry.
I think that if you think about it less as an Esper Stoneblade deck with Grim Lavamancer instead of blue cards, and more as a Dead Gael deck with Grim Lavamancers, it kind of, like, makes sense in your head, if that helps. I do think Esper Stoneblade is, like, generally a better deck, like, probably. I can't think of, like, I'm sure that it exists, but I can't really think of a matchup where I would prefer to be the Team Italia deck. I mean, like, some builds of it are probably, like, depending on card choices, like, maybe better against certain combo decks and stuff like that, but that's just because you have, like, Hymns and Thoughtseizes, and, like, Esper Stoneblade can play, like, a lot of hand disruption if it wants to, too. So, yeah, I don't see a lot of incentives, basically. But, I mean, if that's what you want to do, like, I feel like it's mostly an excuse to play, like, Dark Confidant and Stoneforge Mystic together and not feel, like, bad about it. But, I don't know. Like, I would just be playing Stoneblade.
Yeah, I mean, like, how deep do you want us to go in critiquing, like, the red, white, black aggro control deck, like,
Well,
in Legacy, right? Like, I mean, we could start with, like, the Grim Lavamancers, or we can, like, you know, I can delve into, like, this guy's playing Hymnotorak, but he's decided he doesn't want to play 4, and I'm not sure in what world, like, you have Hymnotorak in your deck, and you're like, I kind of just want to draw 1. And so you're opting to choose to play 3 instead of 4. Like I don't really, like, Gerard Fabiano is the person that, like, built this deck, and it's kind of the one that, like, spearheaded the movement on it, and then, like, I don't know if he still plays it or not, but, like, his list was, like, all over the place to begin with. Like, he had one Hero of Bladehold in his list at one point, and then, you know, Pat Sullivan was like, well, why are you playing Hero of Bladehold? And it's like, yeah, like, can't bolt it, blocks him a Mongoose. And it's like, oh. It's like,
that is the best answer ever.
Yeah. Okay, Gerard. I don't. So, I mean, how do you want this? How do you want this to go, Steven? How do you want this to go with Team Italia? Like, this deck list is all over the place. The concept of the deck is all over the place. I would much rather just let it be.
All right, that's fair.
And just move on, because, like, the more we delve into it and try to dissect, like, why the cards are there and why you would ever want to play, like, these cards instead of, like, Brainstorm is just, like, very hard to figure out. So,
all right.
I mean, at the end of the day, we're, like, trying to dive into Gerard Fabiano's mind, right? Like, that's what's actually happening.
Yeah, and that's, like, insanity too.
It's a labyrinth.
Well, I only ask because I know you were physically at the event, and sometimes you're like, oh, I know that dude. He's a mad genius. He gets stuff done. But in this case, you don't have that read. He may be.
And, like,
You don't
the guy
need Brainstorm when you have 2 Sensei's Divining Top. Brainstorm every turn.
Right.
All right.
The guy who was playing the deck didn't, like, play bad. Like, he was on camera at least twice, and he played, like, reasonably well. I mean, his deck construction is, you can interpret it however you'd like to, and I'm not even saying it's good or bad. Like, this could be the best version of Team Italia, and I wouldn't know it. But It's just not a deck that I would play or ever consider playing, but that's just who I am.
Yeah. And I'd like to say before we move on completely from Legacy that my horse in Legacy is still a 3/4 that does the Gangnam Style dance when you attack.
Correct.
So let's get out of Dodge. I think we've done about as much Legacy as we're willing to, and Doubtless made one person really angry at us. But the other thing we're going to talk about this week are the continuation of the Return to Ravnica spoilers. As we get closer and closer to the actual physical return to Ravnica, we get to see more and more exciting cards, such as today's This is a Guild Mage and a really big flying rare you will lose to in Limited. But other than that, we've seen a number of things. I think we've seen that troll, Lothleb troll or something, and definitely Super Smother and some other stuff since we've talked about things last week. So the first thing I wanted to talk about in regards to Return to Ravnica spoilers was the position of black-green zombies, which has been a very popular deck choice to talk about for the upcoming Standard season that is not yet here. I know Jerry and Brad did a video about it that came out on Star City today, and I've seen a lot of talk about it. So I'm going to get each of your individual opinions about black-green zombies with what we know now in the current Standard. Let's start with Cedric again. I think you get to start now.
You always start with me.
Always, every time.
All right, so here's basically what I think about black-green zombies. Like, it's very obvious that they are pushing black-green zombies. Like, Lorith Troll, look at all this card does, and it happens to be a zombie. Gerard, Gorgori Lichlord, it has all these words, and it happens to be a zombie. And then...
Has a whole bunch of words.
And then Dreadmangler, oh look, an aggressively costed zombie. Okay, well, it's pretty obvious that they're trying to make... And then Abrupt Decay, which isn't a zombie, but I mean, come on. That's going to likely go in the black-green deck as, like, its removal spell. Anyway, like, they have done this before. The most recent example is with black-white tokens, where, God, what's the name of the set again? Before I was
Dark Ascension?
Dark Ascension. Dark Ascension, thank you. Where they're like, hey man, Lingering Souls, what's going on? Sorin, Lord of Innistrad, that works really well with tokens and makes tokens. And don't forget about Intangible Virtue, and look at all these tokens we're printing. Have a ball. And that deck is atrocious. So I'm not saying that, like, black-green zombies is going to be bad. I think it's just very obvious that it's a deck, and by it being very obvious that it's a deck, like, people are going to A, try it, and B, for those of those people who don't want to try it, or that's, like, not their thing, they're just going to be like, hey, yeah, I'm beating that, so I'm going to play, like, 4 Night of Glories, or, like, all these ways to play, like, things that beat this zombie deck, since it's, like, likely going to be a linear aggro deck. So, while the deck may or may not be good, and we don't have all of the cards, like, for Golgari or any of the other guilds yet, I just don't, like, it's very easy for people, like, at this point where we are in, like, the cards being spoiled to be like, oh man, black-green zombies is going to be so good, how are we ever going to beat it? And it's just like, we still have, like, 150 cards to be spoiled, and a lot of things are going to change, and then people are going to, like, go back to the block PT results, and then, like, play, like, build those decks and update them. So, I understand the excitement, because, like, a lot of cool cards are coming out, but you also have to be realistic with your approach. Like, when I was testing for Pro Tour Honolulu, black-white tokens, like, after, like, 6 games in, I was just like, this deck is just bad. If I don't draw Lingering Souls, this deck is just terrible. And, like, a lot of people are going to play this at the PT. Like, isn't everyone going to come to the same conclusion as me? Like, they're going to, like, build the deck because it's, like, very obvious to build. Like, you put in your token makers, like, you put in your Hero with Blade Holds and your Crusades, and they're just going to go, yeah, deck doesn't do anything. There's no other way you can build it. So, like, moving on, like, I feel like the same thing could potentially happen with black-green zombies, where it's, like, very easy to build, you play your games with it, and then it's either good or bad. And then, if it's good, then people are going to try to counteract it, and if it's bad, then it just doesn't matter.
Alrighty, let's go to Glenn next. Glenn,
Sure.
rock on.
First off, I called it when we had Dreadmangler. It was black-green zombies, so I get a little mini score. I'm gonna call it like a third of a point, not a full scoreboard, but you know. I think black-green zombies definitely, like, I agree with Cedric that Wizards is pointing us at it. I don't know why a lot of people seem to be, like, restricting it to black-green in their head. We're gonna have Shocklands, like, Black's got 2 guilds in this set, right? At least. So, and green has obviously green-white also, although I don't really see that happening. But it could. So I think the mana could be good enough to go into a 3-color zombie deck pretty reasonably, especially with Cavern like around to play like semi-multicolor card. The Lawless Troll is sweet. It's another 2-drop. I think Bloodthorn Vampire is like a fine one that the zombie decks aren't running enough of now, and Sign of Blood's also good. Sign of Blood will be a little worse with fetch lands in the mix though, shock lands, because you don't want to be taking quite as much damage. You want to be able to manipulate it better. And Lawless Troll is just like a sweet man. Like, he's huge. He has synergy with your cards. In the late game, he's strong, especially with the cards like Scavenge, like when you need to get your board presence amped up rather than like spend your time casting a creature, especially in zombies where like you get into these late game situations where you're casting creatures that can't block. Super awkward when you'd rather just attack. So like you basically have, like shock on delay or something, or you could just discard it, attack with this awesome 2-drop, move on. Regenerate's also probably going to be a pretty good ability, I would expect. It seems like just like the format's degenerating to being a lot of creature decks. The sweepers aren't that good, and none of them stop anything from regenerating that I've seen at the moment. So, other than Mutilate, of course, but I'm not sure how relevant that card's going to be. We haven't really seen enough to know. So yeah, I think it's going to be a deck. I wouldn't be surprised to see it splashing in some additional colors. I mean, right now, the fact that black is a primary guild in the set is going to be a huge factor for the deck. I think maybe once we get the next set or the set after that, the deck probably won't get as many tools and will pull back a little. But starting off, like, I think we'll be seeing a fair amount of zombies, also because it's just porting in so much from Innistrad, obviously. Although I will say that Undying and Scavenge being like in the same, like, not like space or whatever, but like all the cards that are good like are going to share these abilities. I think Scavenge is kind of underrated, and Undying is obviously very good. So that's kind of a bizarre thing that black and green are going to have to figure out which one they're playing or like how they're playing which ones, and I think it might limit some of the playability of Scavenge depending on how much Undying you're running.
All right.
That's a good point.
Steven, you get to follow up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of on Cedric's side with this, except my recollection is when, like, red-green spirits for Champions of Kamigawa block was the big thing. Everyone was real excited. And this may be before you guys' time. I don't know. This was a long time ago, but I bought a lot of Kadama of the South tree. And if you don't know what that card does, it's because, it turns out that card doesn't really do anything. So, like, obviously, like, I look at the spoiler and there are black-green cards which come zombies, and I definitely agree with Clem that I don't feel like it has to be a 2-color deck. I think that what you got up red for zombies is huge, and the point about Shocklands and how that changes Sign and Blood, Shocklands also changes Burn, and actually the Burn hop of Sign and Blood makes it all better because the other decks are going to be starting on less life. So I think that the red card is going to be pretty desirable. I could definitely see a black-red build, which was stretching for green, and that makes sense with the cards that are spoiled and everything. But I sort of, like, who knows what's going to happen with the rest of the spoilers, obviously. And then you also have to consider the metagame. Zombies is a strong aggro deck, but it's not the most difficult strategy to hit out in the world, I don't think. There are Knight of Glories running around and stuff like that. So you have to consider not only, like, can I build 60 cards out of this stuff, but also how will the format respond? Will they just completely destroy me if I do?
Okay. Are we done here? It feels like we explored this topic fairly thoroughly. I want to do a couple specific cards before I just sort of start throwing it around, and we can do a sort of free-for-all on anything I may have left out. But the cards in particular I want to talk about first are the 2 spoiled Planeswalkers, Jace 4.0 with Windblown Hair, and Gorgon Snake Lady. I don't know what her name is. It starts with a V and has like 3 R's. I'm not...
Vraska.
Yeah, that's what I say too, man. But anyway, those 2, Jace 4.0 and the black-green Planeswalker, how good do you think they are going to be, and what, if any, impact do you think they will have? Let's go reverse order this time. Steven, you can start. Cedric, you can finish.
All right. So, my opinion of Planeswalkers, like sort of since their inception, is that they seem to either be extremely strong or extremely weak. There hasn't been that much middle ground, and a lot of it is circumstantial, which colors can play a Planeswalker. Obviously, it's really nice to be playing a deck which wants to play for a longer game. If you're going to play a card that like costs 4 and then has an ability that happens every turn, you know, you want to play another 4 turns or something after you cast it. My opinion of these two Planeswalkers is that they're both on the terrible side, and I think these guys are just bad enough, but just well enough situated. What I mean by that is, like, they're not very good cards, but they fit in archetypes very obviously. Blue-based control-ish stuff, white-green-based rockish stuff. I think they're, like, just bad enough and just good enough for archetypes that I can, like, imagine myself a few months from now sitting across the table, losing to them, and just feeling horrible about my life. Like, absolutely. Put that card in your deck, and there's nothing I can do. 7 turns from now, I will eventually die. My review.
All right.
I think that Jace is a really sweet card in Commander, by the way. But yeah.
Okay, Glenn, you're
Yep.
on the hump on this one.
I think Jace is kind of underestimated. I think the format's gonna have a fair number of like creatures, especially little ones. Lingering Souls should be a pretty dominant card. I was talking with Brian Braun doing at Star City about it, and like you gotta remember, like Lingering Souls Intangible Virtue was so good, like it was banned in block, like just off the bat basically. And we're gonna be resetting to like a block-like format with Return to Ravnica. So the decks that existed before that banning happened are probably gonna like exist again in new forms, of course, but I would see them being probably pretty good. And Jace is excellently positioned against those. And I think his neg2 also, I think like if that neg2 was just draw 2 cards, people would think Jace was probably a better card than he is. But like that neg2 is arguably better than draw 2 cards. And they just don't really realize it because it's got so much text and it's complicated to think about it that way. But like always being able to get like the best card or like the second and third best card, or your opponent just not knowing what they're doing and splitting it completely wrong and giving you the nut blade, like
that always happens.
Yeah, like I don't know how many of you kids in the feed out there have ever cast a Fact or Fiction, but man, people don't know what they're doing. I didn't know what I was doing. Like I was a small child myself, and like eventually one of my friends was like, "Look, man, stop trying to think about it. Just split the lands and the spells." And I was like, "Oh, that's so much easier." All right. And I'm pretty sure that my win rate went up when I started doing that instead of actually trying to make a decision. So, yeah, I think Jace is like pretty underestimated. I anticipate him being like, I think he's probably like even maybe undersold right now. Like his price might be low. However, Vraska, who is like the big one, I think the card is like borderline unplayable. It is like a Lux cannon that comes into play with 3 counters. That's basically what it is. Like
I don't know what that card.
Do you know how popular Lux Cannon was? Like
yeah,
very
it's a very
popular.
popular casual card. So the card will sell. But like as far as a competitive standpoint goes, like no, not super interested. Vraska, I think her power level really depends on just how good the other Planeswalkers in the format are. So like if other people are playing Planeswalkers, Vraska's value goes up. But if Planeswalkers aren't defining the format, then she seems like pretty miserable. Like I anticipate people just ignoring her the vast majority of the time. You're gonna like play a Vraska. If you don't have something for her to destroy immediately, then she's just gonna do nothing for 3 turns, and then you're gonna attack her with like 1 creature or something, and she's gonna do nothing again. Like seems really just not that great with what we've seen so far. There could be, you know, some crazy card or something that's like all of your opponent's creatures attack target Planeswalker or something that actually winds up being good. So like I'll give her the credit of we haven't seen enough to know for sure. But with what we have, I'm not happy about her existence.
The Mindslaver argument?
Yeah, like I mean that's the thing. Like
the Mindslaver argument. All right.
I do not see her being a major player in Standard unless like the format shifts a lot. I am pretty interested by the design of the Planeswalkers because we're really used to seeing Planeswalker +1s being about grinding value, and I think Wizards realized like really quickly that that was a little dangerous because that's how the best ones like immediately hit it, you know. and they've kind of dialed back the +1s. I mean, Elspeth was obviously just like completely nutter butters for her day and age. So comparing the Planeswalkers we have today to like a Planeswalker like that, you can really see that they've kind of tried to find a sweet space where it's a more interactive card. And it's good in some spots, bad in some spots. I like them. I mean, I think Jace could slot in nicely with Tamio and just create like a nice brick wall for a blue-styled control deck, which in turn might be the kind of deck that Vraska would be good against, and then maybe we see some Vraskas. But I do not like that card. I mean, it's a Lux Cannon. Like, that's all I really got for it, man.
I would just like to say, before we move on to Cedric super quickly, someone in the chat brought up that it is in fact a deluxe cannon, which I think is by far the best pun we've seen this episode and deserves to be recognized.
Good job.
Beyond that, Cedric, you may go.
I can respect that for sure. Deluxe cannon is nice. So I don't think Vraska is very good at all as well. The problem is that, like, as you said, like when a Planeswalker comes into play, it has to be able to defend itself pretty well, and like the thing that it's defending has to be like worth what it's defending. So like Vraska's destroyed target non-land permanent is a relatively good ability, of course. Like that's very powerful. The thing is like you can get yourself into a board state where like you play Vraska, and then they're just like, yep, don't care, like attack you, like for 8 or whatever, and like sure, like it's gonna come into play, like kill a permanent, and like it's down to 2 counters, and then you have like a board state that is like already good. And you're just like, yeah, keep attacking you. Like, I'm not attacking that thing. Like, it's not going to destroy another permanent for 2 turns. So why am I attacking that? And if I do care about attacking it with like how creatures are printed now, like if it comes into play and destroys a permanent, it has 2 counters on it, and like every creature now has like at least 2 power. So you're just like, yeah, okay, like sacrifice a guy to kill that, like, and then like attack with the rest of my guys or something. Like it just doesn't affect the board it doesn't affect the board that well. Its -3 ability is far and away its best ability. But you get to activate it immediately, and then you have to wait 2 turns to activate it again, and then you lose your card. And then its ultimate ability is like cool and splashy. I don't think you're ever, and I don't want to like talk in absolutes, but it seems very rare that you're going to kill someone with that in like an actual game, like 3/1/1s, and then like if I hit you, you're dead, and like it can backfire depending on what people are playing in the format. But it just doesn't seem likely that you're going to kill someone with that ultimate. So. Like, I wouldn't play a 5-mana Maelstrom Pulse. And I don't think anyone else would either. Like, no one's rushing out the door to play Desert Twister. So, like this card is cool, and, like, it looks sweet, and, like, if you're playing against, like, a pure control deck, like, it's good, but, like, those don't exist anymore. Like, there's board control decks, like, these giant titans and all this stuff. So, I just don't think that card's very good. Like, I like that it looks cool and all this stuff. I just don't think that it's a very good card. Moving on to Jace. Jace is an interesting card to me because, like, when I first looked at it, I was like, man, like I don't really care about that. You know, like, -1, -0 is, like, not that big of a deal. And then, like, I thought about it a little more, and it's probably a lot better than I think it is. Like, the way that I look at Jace is, and, like, I kind of look at cards in a vacuum, like, that's the kind of card that, like, I'm likely to never play with. Like, it's just, like, not my style, like, control deck, like, whatever. And so, like, I'm thinking it, like, from an aggro perspective. Like, let's say, like, I'm playing, like, a token deck or something, and, like, someone plays Jason and is like, yep, like, use the +1, like, move it up to 5 counters, and all your guys get -1 nego. I'm like, that's, like, pretty annoying. Like, -1 nego is, like, -1 nego, like, potentially could be, like, -5 damage, and, like, that's, like, worth investing a card, and then, like, you're gonna have to, like, use your turn to, like, kill that, potentially, so that's, like, investing in other cards. Like, that's kind of frustrating. The -2 ability is pretty good, because you get to activate it twice no matter what. 3 instead of 5 for Fact or Fiction is like pretty different, but you're either like going to get your best card or you're going to draw 2, so like that's pretty win-win either way. And then the -8 ability is like very bad, because as long as I'm interpreting it correctly, like it does almost nothing. Like you get to like play a spell for free from their deck, which is fine, of course, like that's not bad. But like most Planeswalkers, like when you ultimate them, that's game, and when you do it with this one, it's like not game. So like that's not that good then, right? Like any Planeswalker you ultimate, like when you're playing against Elspeth, you're like up against the clock. You're like, please don't get to 8. Please don't get to 8. Like when they get to 8 here, you're just like, I don't give a fuck. Like it's not a big deal, and that's like a strange feeling, I guess. Jace is probably better than like we all give it credit for in the thing, depending on obviously what else is released and how the format shapes up. But I would be very surprised if like a format shapes up in such a way that Vraska is just like, that's the card I need to like get the job done. Like I just don't see it being that. It seems like very fringe, much more for a casual crowd. Like flavor wise, the card is sweet. Art wise, the card is sweet. For like a competitive crowd, which like the four of us are, and that's like kind of the crowd that we cater to. I just don't think it's that good of a card, and I'm not gonna like lie to you and say that it is. So.
The chat is like really angry about the fact that it is in fact each player apparently on Jace.
Wait, what did I miss? What did I miss?
Apparently you get 2 things instead of 1 thing. When
Oh,
you
I
ultimate.
get to search my deck as well.
Apparently, that's what I hear.
All right,
You
I apologize.
can
I apologize.
clear
I had the
Jace.
card. I had the card up in front of me, and I didn't know that I could search my library as well. So that makes it a little bit better. I do apologize for that, but it doesn't make it like it doesn't change my opinion on it that much. Like it doesn't make my mind go, man, I can search my deck too. Holy shit! Like it's just like okay, that's fine.
I think it's probably better than putting 3 tiny phage babies into play though. Like
Yeah. I think Jace will mostly just be like a +1 neg2 +1 neg2 kind of thing. Like that's how you'll use him, kind of like how we were familiar with Jace Balerion working.
Yeah.
And that card was like criminally underrated for virtually all of its existence. Like
I would agree with that.
It cost 1 less.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think Jace Balerion was a much better card than this card, but like, they harken back to each other, and I think like we underrated Jace Balerion before, and it's not so surprising to just see the same reaction, basically.
I mean, it's
I
interesting.
would.
Go ahead, Steven.
Question for you guys: how many turns do you think Jace Architect of Thought has to be in play for it to be worth your 4-drop?
How many? What do you mean? How many
turns? How many activations do you think you need?
I think that's really hard to say because it's so contextual. Like depending on what they're trying to do to me or what I'm trying to do to them, like each ability's power level is vastly different.
Okay, I'm gonna say 3.
Yeah, that was my first guess. Was like 3 is you're probably reasonably happy if you get the 3rd activation off.
Right.
I mean, it's like really hard, like because like with this Planeswalker and with most Planeswalkers, like when they're attacking it, like that's like drawing a card. That's like you can consider that to be drawing a card / an activation. Like if they're like wasting their turn to try to kill that thing, like it's just really hard card to judge. And that's what kind of makes Planeswalkers unique. Like I have the chat open, and you guys do too, and like everyone's opinions are like varying on like what people think of Jace and what people think of Vraska, and like that's what's good about Planeswalkers for Magic, and like chances like we can easily be wrong about this. Like both cards could be awesome, both cards could suck. Like the people in the chat could be wrong. Like we could be wrong, we could be right, they could be right. Like they're incredibly hard cards to judge. I don't think like the only Planeswalker that was like super easy to judge is like Jace the Mind Sculptor, where you're just like, yeah, that card's good, and every other person's like, yeah, that card's good, and even some people still were just like, I don't know, like Jace the Mind Sculptor isn't that good. It's only got like 3 loyalty, and like the first ability doesn't matter that much. Like who cares if you look at their top card? And like Brainstorm isn't that good of a card. So like who gives a shit? And then it's like, yeah, like you're an idiot for saying that Jace the Mind Sculptor is bad. And then like you're getting in arguments about that. So like they're just incredibly hard cards to judge because they affect how decks are built, how games are played, how attack steps are done. Like they just affect every single thing. Like even a Planeswalker as narrow as Sarkhan the Mad, or as most people call it, Sarkhan the Bad. Like that card was not that good, and then like it cropped up because people started playing it in Jund, and then like if you drew it in the Jund mirror, the game was just over immediately. You're just like, yeah, 5/5 dragon, game. And like that card's not a good card. Like it doesn't see play in any format now, and it doesn't see play in any other decks. But like if you drew that card in the Jund mirror, game over. Sorry, like this card sucks, but you can't beat it. So like kind of arguing over it is fun just for the sake of arguing, but like people like calling you stupid or stuff for like thinking that like the card is bad. It's not like these cards are incredibly difficult cards to judge how good or how bad they are in the abstract, especially when we don't even have all the other cards like from the set of Return to Ravnica.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that there are going to be other blue cards which fit in a controlling sort of deck, which
Bold
is
claim.
which is why at the start I said like I think Jace is pretty bad, and I am expecting to sit across the table from it and lose to it and feel miserable about myself.
Yeah.
Do you know that Syncopate has returned? Were you aware?
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited about that one. I do want to say, I think that Vraska is like a pretty well designed card. Like its Lux Cannon, the card I compared it to, was like really popular, like as a casual card, like as a card people sought after, like people liked it even if it wasn't good. And Vraska like harkens back. She does like a lot of the similar things, and her abilities are cool. Like people want to try and kill each other with phage babies. Like that's just natural. Like that's cool. You know, I've tried to kill people with actual phages, so like it's just it's a natural impulse, and I'm fine. So I think the card's cool, and I can understand why people have like immediately attached themselves to it as like seeing it and wanting it to be awesome. But I think it's a case of like that's what's happened. Like they want it to be better than like it actually is better.
Yeah, I think like a good example like of that, like the thing you're bringing up, Glenn, where like they want it to be good and it's not that good, like Tezzeret, Agent
Yeah.
of Bolas. Like that card is sweet. Like it does all these things, and outside of Shota Yasuka, no one has won with it.
Yeah. I think that card missed. I think that was a design that was actually like supposed to be good enough, and like the way that the format just shook out, like it was just narrowly not there. That's like kind of my read on Tezzeret. Is like I think Wizards is probably a little sad about how he wound up.
I'm fairly sure that like Vatutinha has won some matches with Tezzeret.
Yeah.
Excuse
I'm
me.
sure people have.
Did you guys see that they fixed Restoration Angel? We now have Skyline Predator, which costs 6 and doesn't flicker one of your creatures.
It's
Same
not even-
body, flash flying.
It's not even indestructible. I'm extremely disappointed with this limited filler.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, like, in response to your abstractly evaluating Planeswalker's point, and you referenced Jace the Mind Sculptor. Do you guys remember when they spoiled Jace the Mind Sculptor? Like, they hid, like, little pieces of the card all over the world, and every piece was like, wow, this ability is retarded! And then there were just, like, 4 of them? Like, like, what is going on this card? It's just what to the loyalty? Like... But yeah, I mean, I want to echo your point that, like, I know I personally, aside from you wonderful wizards, am, like, really notably bad, like, much worse than I am at all other Magic things at evaluating cards, like, when they're spoiled before they see play. Like, I have had some incredibly wrong opinions about stuff, so you should definitely not take my word as gospel on this subject. But, yeah, it's fun to spitball about cards when they're spoiled. So, that's what we're doing. Do you guys want to just sort of throw it into Melee from here? You have any particular, you want to talk about Dodeca Elephant? Like, where do you want to go from here? Anyone have any strong feelings?
I love Detain as an ability. I said that in the chat, and I think like it's really powerful and really underrated. Like when I saw those cards, I was just immediately like, huh? Like I was joking when we were testing with Delver and calling like Sleep the Blue Bonfire because like it kills all the creatures for the rest of the game, which is the only time that it matters they're alive. So that's like kind of, and then I see Detain, which is just like maybe kill a creature for the only turn that creature will matter in a lot of cases, especially when we're expecting a deck zombies that has difficulty defending itself already to be like any kind of good. Like I'm just picturing people playing grave crawlers and then I'm playing Detain creatures and it's like comical what's going on, like they're just playing this creature that doesn't have text or powers or anything. It doesn't exist anymore. And that's, I think, the space we'll see Restoration Angel moving into, and it's probably good enough to make Cloud Shift good. I think that card was like pretty close to being on a constructed power level. I know like for the Block Pro Tour in testing, it was like fine, not insane or anything. And with Detain around, I expect the card to be pretty reasonable. The Detain 2 guys card is probably criminally underrated also. I think the 1 white blue 3/1 flyer, I think everyone recognizes that like Core Hookmaster on steroids is probably good enough. But the 2 white 2/2 is actually like pretty big deal, I think. So
Alrighty. Steven, you have anything to say about detaining before we go to Cedric?
I just to me, it's very, very natural that when a card gets detained, you turn it upside down. Like, sorry, not like flip it upside down, but actually like turn it 180 degrees. Is that what people are gonna do? It's just so natural to me, and it's weird. I don't know where that comes from. How would you represent that your creature was detained? I guess is my question.
That's how I've seen people doing stuff like Wirewood Symbiote and whatever. Like I know that's how Caleb did Wirewood Symbiote.
Yeah.
So like I think that makes sense to me. Like I think it's fine.
Do you think you can make like little like Detain mock-up things, like little bars, and then you can just like put them on the thing.
I'm sure Inkwell Looter will.
Yeah.
That
Is
guy
that-
has some pretty cool pieces. His soul bond thing was like 2 broken hearts or something. Like that was nice.
Alrighty, Cedric, roll out.
I think Detained is sweet, and I want to, I think it's like it's a very like ability for like aggressive decks. I think the ability is good overall. It's very good in flavor for Azorius as well. I just want like a cool thing to say, like when I detain something. I think that's like most important for me because I'm a child. But like you're under arrest isn't like good enough for me.
Stop criminal scum. Is that?
Yeah, like there's got to be like something like the movie Judge Dredd is coming out like this week, and the whole movie is just bad puns. Like that's kind of like the selling point of the movie is like for those who've seen like the old Judge Dredd, like the new Judge Dredd, it's just like Carl Urban just saying the most ridiculous shit. He's just like, "What's the verdict? Guilty," and then like he shoots his gun or whatever. So that's what I want to do. Like when I'm detaining something, just be like, "You're under arrest," and then play like my 3/1, and then like detain it and then attack him. Yeah. So we need to think of something good for that. But everything else Glenn said was fine.
All right. Tough but fair.
Here all week.
Okay. What are we gonna? Did you have something you wanted to regale us with, Cedric? I didn't.
Oh, so I have a couple of cool. I just have like a couple of cards I want to talk about from the spoiler.
All right.
Just like flavor-wise, if they're good, if they're bad, and then I'll ask you the mystery question so I can get your
Okay.
honest, candid responses.
Let's do it.
Okay, so Dodeca Elephant. Like that card is just like in your face good, and like this is like a dumb question, I guess. Like, there are a lot of 3-mana 4/4 creatures that are just like no drawback, all upside.
I mean, not really. The only one that leaps to mind is like that Leatherback Baloth, which is like
right, okay.
definitely has more drawback and definitely has less upside. So
I think we can give Knight of the Reliquary an honorary badge.
oh yeah,
in
that seems
club.
fair.
Okay. Like I don't know, like this. I just like look at this card and it's just like, yep, nothing bad going on here. Just aggressively cost it, can't counter it. If you Liliana me, it's coming to play. Just suck it all day. If you want to play Celestia, it's just in your deck. Like, and then there's just nothing else to say about it. Like, there's no like we were arguing about Planeswalkers. What are we gonna argue about this card? Just like, yep, it's good. Anything else to say?
Like many large creatures at low costs, it has synergy with Rancor.
Yeah. Just all upside, nothing bad, just suck it. Just deal with it.
My only point is that green white sucks. That's
I
the
have
only argument I can make.
I have 1.5 points. I don't think that card is as good as people think it is. Like, I still think it's good. I don't think it's as good. Like, I've seen some people who are really ecstatic about it, and I think that's just, like, a lot closer to how good creatures are now than, like, oh my god, this is fantastic. And my other point is that, A, we neglected the woolliest of Thoctars, and B, I don't think this card is as cute as the woolliest of Thoctars.
Woolly. I would agree. Yeah. I would agree. And like the other thing I kind of find humorous about Dodeca Elephant is just like I remember like when I was younger, and I don't even remember when this set came out, but like Judgment came out, and like they printed Anurid Brushhopper, and everyone was like, "Are you kidding me? You think you can just print this card and it's fine? Like what is wrong with you? Like does Wizards know what they're doing? Who runs R&D? Like let's go to Seattle. This is absurd." And now this card is just like gets printed, and people are like, "Yeah, whatever. Was there anything good in this set, or like are they planning on printing any cards?" Like that's just like where we're at with creatures now. Where like you print a 3-mana 4/4 can't be countered, and if you get to discard, it's awesome. Then people are just like, "Yeah, whatever. Who cares? What else is in the set?" One of the cards I talked about while I was doing coverage really quickly, Supreme Verdict. It's the Uncounterable Wrath for 1 white blue, destroy all creatures. Basically our Day of Judgment replacement. You can still regenerate off this card, so like Lorith Troll is still like good against this effect. But a lot of people are like freaking out because it can't be countered. But like the thing with Wraths, in most cases, and not all cases of course, but in most cases, Wraths aren't being countered anyway. So like it being uncounterable like just isn't that relevant.
Mhm.
You know, you're casting Wrath against like green white aggro, like mono red, like zombies or something like that like don't have counter spells. So like when they tag can't be countered on this, what they basically did was like tag a blue mana so it's harder to cast, and then tag can't be countered on it. Like so like if it was like just 2 white like Day of Judgment and they tag can't be countered on it, I'd be like what are they doing? Like they made Day of Judgment obsolete. But like this card isn't strictly better than Day of Judgment because it's harder to cast, and then like the can't be countered isn't that relevant. Excuse me, like places I see this relevant. Obviously, the block needed a Wrath, so like I think they needed to print this card or a Wrath effect like in the block. So like we have it now, and it makes sense for like where they're printing it, like in the Azorius Guild. And I think like the places that this can see play, like one place that really like jumped out to me is like Stoneforge and Legacy, or just like blue white decks and Legacy, because like one place that you actually want to be countering, like you actually want an uncounterable Wrath is like against Merfolk or against Rug, where like the actual card Wrath of God like would be embarrassing. So like they have to play Terminus, but like I could see them like putting like 2 of these in their sideboard and just like suck it. Like I bet you have a Force of Will and your creatures are dead. So like that's where I kind of see this card getting played. Outside of like we might not have access to another Wrath, so you have to play this card. But I think it being uncounterable is like not very exciting. Basically, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I
think it'll be a good sideboard card.
To me, it's like worse than Wrath of God for block format, and okay, maybe not better than Wrath of God for legacy format because of the regeneration, but it's actually more exciting for legacy format than it is for block format because it's a new option on a Wrath that we didn't have before. And when the card pulls that big, they're going to be decks, obviously, that you want that against.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then just the last one is what's it called? Dryad Militant. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Savannah Lions with upside.
Yeah. Hybrid mana Savannah Lions with upside. Like this card is good because like it has text where Savannah Lions only has a story to tell or no text. Like
that was very good.
Story to tell.
Yeah.
The only like the thing here is like the text is like good. Like if they would play a sorcery or instant that we put in the grave from anywhere, like Exile instead, like that is good. But I don't want to think like some people like were like this card is like the answer to Snapcaster Mage. Yeah, it's like it's a 2/1. Take a breath. No one's rushing out the door to play Savannah Lions. Like this is Savannah Lions that can be cast from like multiple different decks, and it has its applications, but like this isn't like the end all be all. Like some people were just like, you play this card against Dredge, and it's over. Like they can't win. It's just like that's not even close to true. Like again, it's a 2/1. Like
Not how Dredge works.
Yeah, that's not even close to how Dredge works. Like sure, like maybe you turn off their Dread returns, and then you're just getting ape smashed by like Icarid and Bridge from Blow tokens and Narcomoebas, just all this other stuff. Like there's so many things that go into beating Dredge that like this card helps, and it's nice that it's a Green Sun Zenith's target and Legacy and all that jazz. But like again, like put things into perspective and like find their applications. Don't just like cry wolf or say like this card is the end all be all for like X card when it's a 2/1 for 1. That's all.
Okay. Do we get to hear the bonus question now? Because I'm all excited.
All right, bonus question. So I was talking with my friend when the gates were released, and what it looks like they're doing is like gates are basically taking the spot of the bounce lands from before, like Azeroth, Chancery, and all that stuff. So we were like wondering, like, were the bounce lands too powerful? Like, were they more powerful than they were intended? That sort of thing. And then we're like discussing like what like kind of bounce land would you have to design for them to like redesign that kind of card? So what we came up with, and like this just led us to, we don't know one way or the other if like this is okay, if it's not okay, but like it's kind of like a fun like discussion, is if they made a new bounce land that tapped for hybrid. So like the blue-white one, for example, would be blue-white, blue-white, blue-white. And then when it comes into play, you have to return 2 lands to your hand. And it comes into play tapped still, like a bounce land. So instead of picking up 1 land, you have to pick up 2 lands. And then it comes into play tapped, and when you tap it, you can tap for hybrid blue-white, hybrid blue-white, hybrid blue-white. So it can be blue-blue-white, blue-white, blue, like whatever. Triple white, triple blue.
It would be
Ooh,
like.
I would draft it.
I'm gonna lead the hosting on this one.
Alright,
I'm
yeah,
gonna
rock
go
on.
to Adam.
I think it would be like markedly worse than the bounce lands were, obviously, because you're like really, really cold to like both boomerang and like even bad stone rains are just like, well, this game's
Mhm.
over. Like I have, you could lose matches in Ravnica Limited to just like people getting you with like bad stone rains, like I did at.
The Dalkin Water.
Yes, that card actually came up quite a bit, but
Mhm.
like even bad stone rains, like I'm thinking of Seismic Spike, like I definitely got murdered by Dr. Martell at like drafts, at PTR Charleston, where it was just like, yeah, get your land, and I was like, you can't do that. What do you, that card's unplayable, and he just like very easily murdered me. So, yeah, I think these would put you very much more at risk, but I think they would occasionally get into decks, yeah. Like, I think the fact that it generates card advantage from your land slot is like powerful enough that it would make it into your deck still.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment. I think you wouldn't be getting crazy like people do with bounce lands where you're jamming like 4 in or something. Like you just can't afford to do that, and it'd affect your mulligan abilities a lot more than bounce lands did before. But I could see those cards being like definitely you'd play them a fair amount of the time in limited. I think most of the time you would play one if you had it, maybe 2. In other formats, it'd like really just depend on the cards. Like if there are ways to punish it or not, then that's a huge deal. Like if Tectonic Edge like existed in the same set as that card, then they're like stone unplayable. But if it didn't, then that kind of thing.
And Steve.
I just think that's too powerful a thing to put on a card. And I don't think necessarily that it would be broken anywhere. It's sort of cool that like it sort of lines up. Like in block, there's not that much to do when you return 2 lands to your hand, so whatever. It's not that insane. Whereas in Legacy, where obviously if you play that card on turn 3, like you just drew 2 cards off your land, like straight up, like you play 4 brainstorms, so this is absolutely unreal amazing. But obviously people have like the wastelands and the ways to deal with it.
Yeah.
So it sort of like cancels itself out everywhere, but I feel like there would be some point where having a land that just drew you so many cards would ruin stuff. Like obviously would go in a Life from Below deck right now. I could see that happening. Maybe not obviously, but maybe you could like build a Life from Below sort of deck that really, really exploited that. I don't know, like it's a cool card to think about.
Yeah, like there's like a lot of benefits and there's like a lot of downsides to it. So like
Right.
that's what we thought about for a little while, and then like the thing, like the land destruction argument is like there, but at the same time, like WotC's made it like pretty clear that like land destruction is like not going to be a thing. Like especially 3-mana land destruction. Like I don't think they're going to be printing anymore moving forward. Like that's why we have like Craterize and all that jazz. So
Sure.
like 4-mana land destruction takes care of it, but it's like, are you going to play like 4-mana land destruction in standard? Are you going to board it in to deal with those lands in limited? It just brings up like a lot of different questions. And then like someone brought.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
It probably
No, go
goes
ahead.
in. It probably goes in a storm deck right now. It's probably already broken with Twiddle somehow.
Yeah, maybe.
That's fair. Yeah, I didn't think about that. Cloud of Fairies and all that nonsense.
Like yeah,
Yeah.
but when you put 3 like tap make 3 mana on a land, like you have to worry that it's broken somehow.
Yeah, for sure. And like then people are talking about like what rarity would you put this land at? Like would you put it in uncommon? For like limited, would you put it at common, which were the bounce lands were at? Like God forbid you put this at rare. Like I could see Wizards putting it mythic because fuck it. Like
we haven't experienced that particular brand of joy yet, right? Like there haven't been any
Yeah.
mythic lands.
Not like that I can recall, or not that were especially good, at least.
Because I mean, I'm fairly certain it's going to happen and we're going to taste it, but we haven't tasted it yet.
Right.
man, I don't know if they print any myth. Someone's saying Ivugan.
Ah,
How much?
yeah.
How much
Okay.
was that? That was like a one of, right? But it was played a lot.
Yeah.
It saw a
Shut
decent
up.
amount of. It saw like a decent amount of play. It's typically just a one of, and in the block format, like you played multiple. You played like multiple in your
Yeah.
like your ramp deck because like you would wasteland theirs, and it was like the best draw in your deck after turn 5. But
Sure.
It's also kind of like a land in the sense that Mazabeth is a land, you know? It's
Yeah.
like kind of hiding. It's not.
Yeah, the old land spell.
Yeah.
Before we get too far from the Karus, can I just briefly mention that do any of you gentlemen remember that Tim Aiden article where he did a draft recap and took like 27 bounce lands?
Yes.
That's like probably my favorite Magic article of all time. I just wanted to like just throw that out there while we were talking about the Karus.
Like
there are a lot of gems.
Between that and the backwards article that Tim did, like, I don't think the backwards article can ever be done again, or you have to wait like 10 more years to do it so no one knows that it exists again. Like, the Karoo article was just, it had me in tears.
I don't know. I mean, I know it was on Star City, but I don't know. I don't have a link off the top of my head. But you guys should look it up because it was good. It was just like it was dead serious, and he was doing a series of draft things, and then he just put one up where he just like took a Karoo every single pick, and his deck had like 13 cards, and they were like 5 colors or something. And then people were on him in the comments. They were like, "This is ridiculous. Your deck doesn't do anything." Like it was quite good.
I'm seeing if I can find it right now for people to put in the link, but you can keep going on with the show.
Yeah.
I don't know if we have too much more. I mean, I don't know if anyone wants to like specifically talk. Oh, there's one card I want to talk about, but I mean, I think everyone should note that the Smother is very good. It is insane. It will be played in multiple formats. Like, I think we're all in consensus about this. Card is good.
Card's good.
Does stuff. Yeah. Do you guys want to talk about Derp Owl? Because that's like by far my favorite card in this set thus far. By which I mean, Judge's Familiar, which is like the owl that is.
I knew exactly what you meant.
Yeah, I mean it's very clearly going full derp, like in the art, and it has absolutely no sense of humor. Like it's by far my favorite card in the set, and I think it's like actually very good as well. So I'm interested to hear if you have anything to say about the mighty Derp Owl, other than that its art is sweet, but which I will hear no down talk. By the way, just forewarning you.
Like, one of the most exciting things to me is casting the uncounterable Wrath against Cursecatcher, because, like, sorry, Cursecatcher. I apologize. You are dead. I like that the uncounterable Wrath is in the same set as Judge's Familiar, because that's going to happen, and people are going to look at their Judge's Familiar, and they're just going to be really sad. Like, just openly miserable.
Derp Owl, however, will like very solidly make its way to the bin without cracking a smile because that is his character.
This is where I go now.
Yep.
I got in for my 2 points.
I actually like the Derp Owl a pretty reasonable amount, mostly because like I was starting to like play Magic, at least like real constructed Magic, when like Spiketail Hatching was a card, so I can remember like the influence of that kind of a threat, something with like a little bit of evasion that just made my life slightly harder. Kind of the same sort of thing Thalia like puts people through now, although Thalia is obviously on a much higher power level. The real thing though I like is I think the Derp Owl's strength is against Bonfire of the Damned. It'll make decks playing that like put them in really awkward positions, especially considering Thalia is still legal. Like I can just envision, you know, someone curving out like creatures and then they're like, you know, Derp Owl, and the guy's like, oh crap, now I have to wait a turn to Bonfire, and they're like Thalia, like, oh crap, I still can't Bonfire. Like I think that'll probably come up a fair bit, just having to play around this bizarre wall of little annoying idiots, basically.
I want to say that I feel like Magic players over the last 2 or 3 years have done an outstanding job of not thinking the 1/1 creatures can possibly be good. Like, we started on Squadron Hawk and it was like, this card is terrible, and then it destroyed every format. Okay, not every format. Destroyed every match then. And then, like, the next step, they printed Lingering Souls, and everyone was like, this card is terrible! And it was, like, very clear that the card was Squadron Hawk by itself. Not everybody, it's like, but a lot of people, like, they just will not accept that a 1/1 can be a good card. And, I mean, this is an example of a good 1/1, in my humble opinion.
Alrighty. Do you have any Derp Owl related anecdotes or thoughts, Cedric?
I would just like to have a stuffed animal Derp Owl made for you, so you can put it in place of your little donks to the left of you, or you can put them on top of them, so it can be a trio.
I was just gonna say they're very popular with the stream, so I think that would be upsetting to my viewers if the dogs were to leave.
Sure, I'd agree.
Yeah. All right. So I think that about wraps it for us, unless anyone else has anything they really desperately want to talk about. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. We had a pretty short episode this week because not too much happened. But yeah, thanks very much for watching, and we will be back next week with more Gamestate related shenanigans. Thanks very much, guys.
Bye.